Okay, here we go.
Yes.
Jai Shrimanarayana. Here we are.
Jai
It is
Shrimanarayana.
actually recording, so we can proceed. So, thank you for this meeting, and
Thank you
I
for
appreciate
inviting me.
your participation to our work. We'll try to help, the general public by giving proper, verifiable, solid information. So you were suggesting that this time we talk about Halloween and Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma. You want to? Okay,
Yes,
here we go.
yes, Mataji. What I wanted to understand, it's this time of the year when everyone celebrates Halloween, and obviously I understand that Halloween has been superimposed on a much older festival. In Western Europe it's called Samhain,
Yes.
and that is based, I understand, on an older Celtic festival, or a sort of pre-Christian festival. So, and that I don't know very much about that, but what I wanted to understand was that there's a few questions really as we go into the conversation. The first is that what exactly is Halloween or Samhain?
Yes.
What is there a link to the to the older dharmic culture? We understand that we as dharmis, we celebrate the ancestors. We have ancestor worship. So, and I wanted to understand a little bit about that, but then also take you into the connection, if there is any, between between ghosts and spirits. What are they? What is the linkage with Sanatana Dharma? How do we explain the existence of ghosts? Is there an explanation? And perhaps, finally, if you wouldn't mind touching on what is the relationship between the pre-Christian European religions and Sanatana Dharma, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on these topics.
Excellent, excellent. These are all very good questions, and I'm very happy to elaborate on this. As usual, please don't hesitate to interrupt me at any time, because in fact it gives the presentation some kind of vivacity that is useful to stimulate the interest of the people. Otherwise, we'll all fall asleep. Okay.
I don't think so, but let's carry on, Mataji, please.
So, right. As you very correctly said, the idea of Halloween, what we call Halloween today, is a superimposition of a Christian idea of All Hallows Eve, that was introduced by the church, Christian church, because it was impossible to eradicate the ancient festival of Samhain. Samhain literally means the end of the summer. It is the most important point here in connection to Sanatana Dharma, and so on, is that all the ancient cultures were very respectful towards nature, because they could understand and appreciate the importance of nature and natural cycles on the human life. They depended much more on agriculture, for example. And agriculture according to the natural cycles. They didn't have greenhouses, They didn't have hydroponics or, artificial food, synthetic food, because they appreciated the natural food that grew naturally in the proper seasons. And this was, not because they were not advanced, but because they respected nature more. And just like they respected nature and agriculture, they respected, for example, the woods, the natural vegetation. So they kept, they had woods, forests that were considered sacred. So the forests, the trees were considered sacred. And also they applied the same respect in regard to the cycle of birth and death, which they observed in nature and they consider sacred. So basically, nature also manifests in slightly different ways in different parts of the planet. When we talk about the Celtic culture, and in general the European or Mediterranean or North European, European culture, we speak about two main seasons. So they had just the warm season and the cold season. The summer.
That's in Europe, Mataji.
Yeah.
That's even in Europe.
Yeah.
They didn't have the four seasons that we classically are taught. Basically.
No, they had. You see, the four seasons are not exactly seasons, but they are based on the positions of the sun. There are two solstices, which is the summer and the winter, and then there are the equinoxes that are spring and autumn. So this is where the four seasons come from. So they were not calculated regarding nature, because as we can see, sometimes the cycles of nature, the weather, doesn't care about the positions of the sun. So like we have the beginning of autumn is supposed to be 21st September. But the good season, can continue now. Naturally can continue out up to the end of October. So they didn't have this autumn or fall idea or the spring idea. So they had this nature sleeps and nature wakes up. Nature dies and nature rises again. The resurrection of nature. So they had these.
So Mataji, what you're saying here is that it's not necessarily based on warmth and cold. It's based more on whether nature is superficially alive or not, effectively.
Yes. The manifestation of nature. When nature manifests itself. So it is usually connected with the weather, but not necessarily, because spring is just considered the beginning of summer, and autumn is considered the end of summer. Now, depending on the latitude, summer is longer or shorter, and vice versa. So we have the further north you go, summer is shorter. The further south you go within Europe, summer is longer. And so the general idea of the culture in Europe, the Celtic culture is practically all around Europe. From Scotland to Turkey, they go into Spain and all the other Italy, other places. So it's more or less European as a culture. So they had this great divide. They had two main festivals. One is Samhain, which is the end of the summer, And the other one is Beltane, which is the beginning of the summer, or the end of the winter, whatever you want to call it. So, Beltane is the 1st of May. And Samhain traditionally today is, celebrated like that. But these festivals at that time were not just based on a fixed solar calendar, they were also based on the movements of the moon. So they had a solar and lunar calendar, very much like the Hindu calendar. So in the Hindu calendar, you might have noticed that usually the annual celebrations rarely fall on exactly the same day, because it depends on the movements of the moon. So both the sun and the moon are considered, and this was very much the norm everywhere in ancient times. For example, we still have the example of the Jewish calendar, and the main festival today, for the last 2,000 years, about 2,000 years in the Jewish calendar, is the Pesach, the Passover, which is celebrated in Christianity like as Easter. Easter also it doesn't have a fixed date, depending on the moon. Sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's later. So it was more complex than usually people today can imagine. But in the end, the basic point is that Samhain is the end of the summer, and Beltane is the end of the winter. Now, as I was mentioning before, this also celebrates a natural cycle of birth and death. So, Samhain is, in a sense, the death of nature. Nature has gone through its natural course. We had the harvest. Samhain is also a festival of harvest, very much like the Sharda Navaratri. So it's the end of the year and the beginning of the new year, which is still one of the beginnings of the year, because another beginning of the year is the Yule, the winter solstice, that was earmarked as Christmas, Christmas Eve, Hallows Eve, All Hallows Eve, Christmas Eve. So they were very important festivals because they were both celebrating the end of the year in some sense. But while Samhain was celebrating the death of nature, Yule, as a winter solstice, celebrates the death of the sun, in the sense the solar year. And this is...
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, this is also found...
No, I was just saying this makes complete sense when you think about the timing. So yes, please carry on.
Yeah, so for example, in Bhagavad Gita we find, in Hindu culture, Vedic culture, we find that there are two main periods of the movements of the sun, and each one is 6 months. So the marking is when the sun starts to travel in one direction or the other direction. So after the winter solstice, the day starts getting longer again because of the movements of the sun. While after the summer solstice, the days start to get shorter again. And the word solstice literally means the sun is stopping. because to someone who is observing the movements of the sun from Earth, it looks like on the solstice days the sun stops and then starts traveling on the opposite direction. Compared to the universe, the solar system, it's not that the night becomes day and the day becomes night. It's not like that. Although, if you go to the poles, you will find that the 6 months of after the solstice, at some point at the solstice, you have 6 months of night and 6 months of day at the poles, right?
Yes.
So there are differences between the various cultures according to the climate, the weather, the position, geographical position. So much that in India, in the Vedic system, there are not 2, not 4, but 6 seasons. Probably you heard about that, Sadri?
Yes, I mean, yes, I've heard about that, but I'd love to hear you talk about that, if that's okay. Yeah,
sure. So we have not only the 4 traditional seasons like the summer, the spring, the autumn, and the winter, but we also have the 2 extra seasons, which are the rainy season, which is very, very famous, and the intermediate season of between the winter and the spring. So the rainy season is between the summer and the autumn, and the 6th season in the Vedic Hindu calendar is from the winter to the spring. So it's a passage which is dictated by the cycles of nature again. Because in India, which is, tending to be not only a warmer climate in general, but also very influenced by the rain, more influenced by the rain, seasonal rains, compared to Europe, for example. So the monsoon or rainy season was extremely important, for example, for sea traveling, because there are different winds, very different winds. So in very ancient times, the Vedic civilization, ancient Indian civilization, used the monsoon season, monsoon winds, to travel around without having to, use engines or, rowing too much.
Right.
And
Mataji, could I ask you a specific question regarding?
Sure.
So the key message so far, one key message from what you've said is that the ancients were very much they marked the end of one season with the beginning of another season in relation to nature,
yes.
The birth and death of nature on a superficial level. We've talked about the solstices, we've talked about the Yule, we've talked about these things in terms of the position of the sun. So Mataji, where did this idea of spooks on Halloween come from?
Yes,
where did that come from?
Yes.
Because
the death of nature is a celebration of death.
Right. But we are taught, Mataji, that on the October the 31st, on that night, evil is at its height.
No.
That's
a typical Abrahamic interpretation. It's not evil.
Right. Okay. Please tell us the connection between spooks and ghosts and all these things and what we know as Halloween to perhaps the ancient linkage with Samhain and the pumpkins and all these sort of things, Mataji?
Yes, yes. But that is also connected with the Pitri Paksha in the Hindu culture, with the, even the Vedic culture, because it is objectively, scientifically proven that in this period, at the end of the summer, between when nature dies, the alignment, according to the sun, is the position where the dimension, the portal between dimensions become more active. For example, the 6 months that are described in the Vedic tradition are called specifically Deva Yana and Pitriyana, which means, you remember in Bhagavad Gita Krishna saying people who die, leave their body during the 6 months.
Yes.
The 6 months. Yeah. When the sun is growing, they can go to the higher planets. When people who die in the 6 months, when the sun is waning, is becoming weaker, they more easily go to the Pitri planets. And another interesting thing is that the Ekadashi, which is today, by the way, this Ekadashi at the end of this harvest year is called Deva Uttana Ekadashi, which means it is the time when the Devas wake up from the night. So they're preparing for the day. They get up, they're not starting their daily activities yet, but they are starting to prepare for the day. And the day of the Devas start with the solar solstice. So we are going to the night for the Devas. And this is the night is the time for the Pitris, for the dimensions of the spirits, the dead people, the ancestors. Now, Pitri Loka, we have to understand what Pitri Loka is. It's not a planet; it's a dimension, which is is naturally aligned with Earth. So there is a portal, that is taking the people who die, leave their body. They find themselves on this road, we can say. Ayana means also road, not just road mostly. So there are all sorts of situations in that dimension. The Pitris are a special category of ancestors who were very dharmic during their human life. So they have earned a position as companions of Dharmaraj. So they are Dharmaraj, Yamaraj companions, and they assist Yamaraj as a jury, as an assembly. So they help judge the people who arrive, who are recently deceased, who arrive at the place of Yama. So it's not that all the dead people become Pitris. Not really. When we die...
Right. That's interesting, Mataji, because I was taught that all the ancestors are Pitras.
Nope.
So So is that not then correct, basically?
Nope. Just like, not all those who die, become ghosts. So the Pitris are only the people who are, just like, another big misconception is that, when you die, you attain moksha. Like all those who die have attained moksha. No, that's absolutely not a fact. You need to qualify both to become a Pitri and or to attain moksha. It depends on the qualifications of the level of consciousness you have developed. And this is also helping to understand other misconception, confusion that people have, because they think, okay, there is reincarnation, so when you die you reincarnate. So what about the ghosts? What about the Pitris? This is because when you die, you just get out of one place. You don't get in the same place. Everyone goes in the same place. Everybody gets out of the body. Everyone gets out of the body. But they don't go to the same place. Like, let's say, we can say the body is like a prison cell. Okay? You have spent a number of years in a prison cell. When you get out of that prison cell, so many things can happen. And so many places you can go.
So Mataji, with that then in mind,
Yeah.
Some karmic ancestors go to Pitraloka,
Yeah.
and I guess, is it true that when they have used their good karma, quote unquote, they then go back, after they've used their good karma, they then go back to the earth plane?
Yeah.
Is that true? And then what about these stories you hear about, ghosts haunting abbeys and churches and
we get that.
and all these things? What are they basically?
Yeah, we're getting there. Now, basically, we are talking about 3 possible destinations. So, as I said before, when you get out from a prison cell, most people just go in the next prison cell. So, they take birth again. More or less immediately. There is a short period of time in which they get some kind of reorientation between lives. It depends on your particular karmic situation, your particular level of consciousness. If you are ready to take immediately a new birth, okay, you reincarnate immediately. If you are not ready, you can get some help from, there are spirit guides in between. For good people, these spirit guides are helping them understand, just like from one school year to the next. If you need reorientation, consultation, making a plan for the next year, you get that. When you're ready, you take birth again. Then we have the bad people. People who have some heavy karmic luggage and they have not properly understood why. So they may have to go through a kind of nightmare, which we are calling naraka, which is, generally translated as hell. Which is not a place, is definitely not eternal, and no one is keeping the souls there. The soul themselves is just like a nightmare. Why you have nightmares? Because your subconscious is trying to make you understand that you did something wrong. So you're afraid of the punishment, of the results. It's not a punishment because God is punishing you. It's just the karmic effect, because you've done something stupid and you're getting the results. But when you have actually realized the meaning of your actions and their reactions, then you are ready, you can take another birth in which you're given the opportunity to fix your mistakes, to pay your karmic debts, and so on and so forth. Now, there are some people who are so confused when they die, they cannot move on. They're just stuck. And these are what we call ghosts. They are just very confused. They don't know that, even many of them, they don't know they're dead. Because they are so identified with their previous physical body and mind and identifications and attachments, they cannot realize that they have to move on, because they're not that situation anymore.
It reminds me of that Bruce Willis film, Mataji. I don't know if
Yeah,
that.
The Sixth Sense.
Sixth Sense, yeah, it reminds me of that, basically.
Yeah, but also the other famous film that came before that, Ghost with Patrick Swayze.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, because this is, in fact, this has been observed by all cultures. When a human being dies, depending on the preparation they had, the consciousness, the level of consciousness, type of consciousness they have developed, they go to, any number of different destinations. Just like when you are, you're let out of your prison cell. If you still think you need a prison cell to live because you feel protected and you have someone is giving you food and you can lock the door and your door is locked, so you get into another prison cell. If you don't want, you're not ready to get into another prison cell for whatever reason, then you are in the middle, you are in the corridors of the jail. And you don't know where to go. You don't know what to do. Because the physical body is actually a very useful instrument. What is the main purpose of the physical body? It helps gives root to the mind. Without a physical body, it's much more difficult to control one's mind. Because, the mind doesn't have the limits of the physical body, so it can go everywhere instantly, anywhere. They say the mind speed, the speed of mind. And the mind is restless, so it's running all over the place, everywhere. When we have a physical body, we can ground the mind. We can control the mind and train the mind to, follow orders. And everyone agrees that the mind is a very good servant, but a very bad master. Because when the mind is not trained properly, it will drag you everywhere. And in big troubles, and will give you a lot of suffering. So when we have not, a person who has not attained sufficient realization and sufficient control of his own mind, when they die, they leave the physical body, they are completely under the control of the mind. if the mind is confused, they are confused. They don't know where to go, what to do. They are still attached to their previous identification, but obviously they cannot go back into that body because that body doesn't exist anymore. So they remain stuck here and there, and because they're still attached to the previous lifetime, the previous situation, they tend to attach themselves to places or to persons or families, and they stay there. They're stuck beyond time. They don't even realize they're dead. For this reason, ancient cultures have provided the so-called books of the dead, like the Tibetan Book of the Dead or the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and we also have the Garuda Purana that is also giving a sort of guidance to recently deceased people. And I don't know if you've seen that movie Beetlejuice.
Yes, I did. Yes, ages ago, but I did.
Yeah, now they've done the second one. I don't know if it is on the same level of impact, cultural impact, but the first one got some good cultural impact, and it was showing, that when people die, if they're confused, they are kind of caught up in a sort of bureaucracy where they have to be told what to do. And even they have a manual. They are given a manual. The manual for the recently deceased. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
It's a kind of the Book of the Dead. The preparation, like they're explaining what's happening to them, because if they're confused, they don't know what's happening. Being dead is very much like dreaming, which Shakespeare also, got that idea, that impression, to be or not to be, to die, to sleep no more. In that sleep of death we dream. It's true. When we die, we get out of the physical body in a state that is very much like a dream. So the Book of the Dead and many practices, yoga practices, some Buddhist tantric practices and so on, are designed, we can say, in the best possible way to help people, the soul who is transitioning from death onwards, to know, to understand what's happening and to make the right choices. But we need to start studying these things before we die. Because after we die, it's a little more difficult.
So Mataji, I have a follow-up question on this.
Okay.
And that is, we hear about the gross body and the subtle body,
yes,
and the koshas, etc.
Yeah.
How does that fit into what you've just been talking about now, Mataji, in terms of ghosts? Is it the subtle body that we're seeing when we see a ghost? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, of course. Okay, so the koshas are the coverings of the soul. Okay, the 5 sheets or coverings of the being. So the innermost covering is called the Anandamaya kosha, which is the seed for the spiritual body. Okay, then the next one going outwards is the Vijnanamaya kosha, which is the body made of knowledge, of understanding, intelligence, consciousness. Then the next one, which is more known to people, is the Manomaya kosha, which is a mental body, the body made of mind, the subtle body, which in turn is composed by several layers of consciousness. So there is the consciousness in the waking state, Then there is a dream consciousness, and then subconscious consciousness, and so on. So this subtle body, this mental body, is also containing what we call karmic body, astral body or karmic body, which is also called Karana Sharira, the body of the causes, the causal body, which is the carrying all the seeds of karma. So the next one, going outwards, is the Pranamaya Kosha, is the body made of prana, which we take, some of the prana we take with us when we leave the body, but most of the prana is dissipated again into the universe, goes back into the circulation of the universe. Just like the elements of the Annamaya Kosha, which is the body, the physical body made of food. Anna means food. Okay, the Annamaya Kosha is a gross physical body made of food. So the elements of the gross physical body become dispersed in nature. Again, they return to nature. So a part of the prana also returns to nature. But some we can take with us. Okay, with the mental body. The prana is the bridge between the physical body and the mental body. That's how it communicates. Like, for example, with the chakras, with the pranotherapy, with all the nadis. In the traditional Chinese medicine, they're called meridians. In yoga, they're called nadis, which means rivers, which is much clearer than the Chinese idea of meridians. I don't know what meridians means, because they're not, they're not meridians. They're not in the middle of the day of what. But nadi actually is much clearer, because it gives the idea of so many rivers of energy that circulate. Because like water, prana is always circulating. If the prana gets blocked, so many things can happen. Either good things or bad things. But the nature of prana is to flow. The air, is supposed to flow. Vayu, prana vayu is everything that flows. Like the currents of space, like the air, the winds, So basically, we carry some of the prana with us when we leave the physical body, and we are carried around by our subtle body. We can make an example that the subtle body is like our underwear. The physical body is like the coat, the outerwear, and the subtle body is like the underwear. So we can keep the same underwear even if we change the dress or the coat, and usually we go on, we continue to be carried around by the mind or subtle body, causal body, whatever you want to call it, until we can actually give up, overcome the identification with the mind. And at that moment, we also become free from all material identifications, and that's called moksha. So when you die, but you're still going around in your underwear, you're not exactly free from all garments. You're still carrying around the seed of your rebirth.
So, Mataji, is that why you see ghost hauntings, some of them fade over time?
Yeah.
They no longer see them. Is that because of the phenomena you've just described now, basically?
Yeah, because they can also come to some realization. They get tired of staying there. They get the, the moment of lucidity. They say, well, what am I doing here? So they decide, they get tired of their identification. So when they do that, they're ready to move on and take a new identification.
That's wonderful, Mataji, because that makes sense, because you often hear of hauntings where things change over time.
Yeah.
You know, they say, oh, you know, that person was seen much more infrequently, and then the haunting stopped.
Yeah.
You know, after that's probably, I surmise that that's probably what's happened.
Yeah, and that is exactly the secondary meaning of the Shraddha. You know, we have this Pitru Paksha, the annual Shraddha, which is this very specific time when the dimensions are communicating between each other. So we can more easily get in touch with our ancestors who have not moved on. So when we make the Shraddha offerings, traditionally we offer them Vishnu Prasad. We traditionally the Orthodox Hindus used to go to Gaya, to the Padapadma temple in Gaya, Bihar, which is in Bihar, and make offerings to the Pitris with prasad from Vishnu. So if our ancestor was already in Pitri Loka as a Pitri, because he was a good guy, dharmic guy during his human life, then this offering is recharging his bank account, so he can stay in Pitri Loka for longer. If our ancestor never made it to Pitri Loka because he's still a ghost, this Shraddha offering gives these ghosts, these ancestors, the opportunity to get out of the position of ghost and take a decent human birth, to continue his journey. And it's even beneficial if the ancestor has taken a new birth, because that's going to his karmic bank account as punya, merits. So he's going, wherever he has taken birth, he's going to get some good luck. So this
makes sense, Mataji.
Yeah, this is the importance of the Shraddha. There are 15 days every year that are recommended for these puja, these rituals. And the most important day is the last one of them, which is called Pitri Amavasya, which is just before the Navaratri. So,
right, I understand.
And it ties together, just like in Samhain, it ties together the death of people and the ancestors and their rebirth, or continuing the journey, with the death of nature, because they're both harvest festivals. Navaratri is also a harvest festival, Pongal, in South India. It's a harvest festival. So basically, when we harvest, especially the grains, cereals, grains, we are killing the plants, we are killing the cereals. We celebrate the death because they have come to a ripe old age, they're ripe. They are going to die anyway, so we are harvesting them so that they can contribute in a good way to the benefit of the whole universe, the whole society, all the universal community. This is because the actual good cultures, ancient cultures, dharmic cultures, didn't fear death.
Yes.
Now, the problem is that Christianity and Abrahamics, but especially Christianity, is very afraid of that.
Yes.
It's actually based, we could say that Christianity is a terroristic religion.
Yes.
Because it actually terrorizes people with these, whimsical choices of God, and with the danger of eternal hell.
Mm.
And God is whimsical because, good people suffer. And, why a child is born in a very bad situation, what's his, why is he punished?
Mm. Mm.
And this is, terrorism. Because it takes away all power from the human being.
Sure. So, Mataji, I have a question now to ask you as we
Sure.
finish our discussion on a broader topic. And this question really is that obviously we've talked a bit about the pre-Christian festivals. We've talked a little bit about the fact that they were ancient pagan cultures. And you may not be able to answer this question fully, but it's in the time we have. But
Okay.
what is the link, if any, between Europeans pre-Christianity and Sanatana Dharma? Did they ever follow Sanatana Dharma? Did they follow an offshoot of Sanatana Dharma? Is there a common fabric?
It is important here to understand what we mean by Sanatana Dharma. Because many people confuse Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism, and Vedic culture. And sometimes they even confuse it with bhakti or with some sectarian, devotional ritual identification or something like that. Sanatana Dharma, Sanatana means eternal, which means it's the same in all cultures. It's something eternal, just like the Atman is eternal. This means it's inherent, it's spontaneous, it's natural in each Atman. It's a science of Dharma. What is Dharma? Dharma doesn't mean religion. The word Dharma comes from the root dre, which means to support, sustain. So Dharma is what sustains existence. So each human being, irrespective of the culture and education, training that he had, has some natural instincts that tell him what is good and what is bad. The basic principles of Sanatana Dharma are, for example, truthfulness. So every human being knows that telling lies is not good. Because it's a basic principle. You tell lies, you get caught, you get in trouble, and you mess up your life and you mess up the lives of other people. So lying is bad. Truthfulness is good. Honesty. Of course, there are cultures that want to repress Dharma, so they teach exactly the opposite, but that is an imposition, it's not a natural tendency. By Sanatana, we mean natural, spontaneous, eternal, universal. Okay. The other principle of Sanatana Dharma is compassion, love, benevolence, friendliness. Because all human beings, all sane human beings, okay, then you have the crazies. But that's a different thing. We're talking about the natural, healthy human being, irrespective of, conditionings, cultural conditionings. we all desire friendship and love and good relationships and compassion. We know that when we are compassionate, when we are helping others, we are happy as well. We make other people happy, we are happy. So that has nothing to do with a religion, particular faith. It's a natural instinct. So Sanatana Dharma means natural, spontaneous, which is, from the soul itself. All human beings which are healthy enough mentally, emotionally, they will naturally follow Sanatana Dharma. And Sanatana Dharma includes, of course, respect for nature. Now, Hinduism is supposed to be based on Sanatana Dharma. But we see sometimes that it can become a little confused. But if we go to the source, we find that the actual, genuine, original Hinduism is very faithful to Sanatana Dharma. And the best example of scientific Sanatana Dharma is the Vedic culture, because it is a scientific knowledge and application of the Sanatana Dharma. Of course, not all human beings are up to the standard of Vedic culture, because Vedic culture is also called Arya culture, which means, they are civilized human beings. Not all human beings want to be civilized, which is okay. Just an Arya. You're not Arya. Okay, no problem.
So how, Mataji, does that link with the Druids? At one time, if you were to go back, were the Druids did they follow Sanatana Dharma, Mataji?
Yes, they follow Sanatana Dharma, although they did not follow the Vedic Dharma. Because the Druids didn't have the clear scientific knowledge and system in application of knowledge, for example, of the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. They didn't follow the Varna Ashrama, they didn't follow the Varnas, and they didn't follow the Ashrams. They didn't follow the Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas.
Right, yes.
But they follow the basic principles, which is truthfulness, compassion, cleanliness or purification, and self-control, which are the basic principles of Dharma. And they also follow the basic principles of Vidya, which are, for example, the knowledge, the awareness of the eternity of the soul and the natural process of reincarnation.
Yes, yes.
So they respected nature. They had the idea of sacredness of nature. Purification, respect, cooperation. They had their own laws. That means they were following Sanatana Dharma.
Yes.
But not Varnashram. Like, for example, the Celtic populations, the Norse, especially the Norse populations, they had slavery. They were stealing, basically. They were fighting each other, to get wealth and slaves and stuff. That is not the Vedic system. But still, when they went to war, they were not totally adharmic, so they were not destroying everything, they were not poisoning the wells, they were not destroying the trees, and they were not killing women and children, they were not, killing the animals just for war. These are the characteristics of the Asuric people. Asuric people are by definition adharmic, against dharma. We read in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 16, the description of the characteristics of the Devic, the Deva culture and the Asura culture. So when a culture does not respect nature, does not respect honesty, sincerity, truthfulness, does not respect compassion, cooperation, does not respect non-violence, does not respect purity, then it's not following Sanatana Dharma. Which means that the human beings in that culture, they still have the Sanatana Dharma tendency, but they are trained against it. For whatever reason, by indoctrination, by laws, by repression, but they are taught, they are forced, in some cases, to go against Dharma. That doesn't mean that they don't have the tendency to Dharma. Because even in the Asuric ideologies, in order to support the Asuric ideology, the propagandists, they still have to present it as a dharmic ideology. Like love, compassion, cooperation, brotherhood, and so on. But that's not true, because if you go and see, in their scriptures and in their history, that is exactly the opposite. They're adharmic. So, the Varna Shrama Dharma, the Vedic system, is basically sattvic. By rule, deliberately sattvic.
That makes complete sense, Mataji.
But also in other cultures, you can find sattvic people who are living even in non-sattvic cultures, but they are still sattvic by nature, their own personal nature.
Yes.
So they try to survive.
I understand, Mataji, totally. Mataji, I'd like to thank you for your time on this wonderful session.
Thanks
It's been incredibly helpful and very, very informative. I've learned a lot. I wonder whether, connected to this topic maybe, for our next discussion, we could talk about a few topics that I think are very important.
Okay.
And the one is, what do we mean by Tantra?
Yes.
Because a lot of people come across it.
Oh, definitely.
And what is Tantra? What is Tantra as in Vedic culture?
Yeah.
What is it? Is it? I think that would be helpful. And then we could also perhaps have a discussion about, for the average person, what should they be? How much involvement should they be having with the paranormal, in it, quote unquote? I mean, what aspects should they keep away from? What aspects should they be comfortable with? And maybe we should have that as part of our next discussion.
Write it down, because we are going. Please bring up these topics exactly in the same way.
Yes.
So that we can start from there. Okay.
Very good, Mataji. Thank you for your time. Jai Shri Manara.
Jai Jagannath.
Jai Jagannath.